A few years back, I read an article, and the title of the article was "My Cat Can Paint Better Than This." And I guess that this is the introduction, that most people have, for abstract painting. Most people think, it doesn't make sense. And, well, it doesn't make sense. Because, we have this habit of feeling that everything, has to make sense in this world. Sometimes, when art flows as a feeling, then the whole idea that it should be sensible, that it should be appealing to the intellect, that problem is not there. That something should have a meaning, that is also not there, because the meaning is what we derive from what we see, what we observe, what we experience. So, when we come to the part of abstract art, let us not proceed with a kind of notion that painting has to make sense. Painting doesn't make sense, nor do any of the other arts. They don't make sense. They create a feeling in the viewer, they create a feeling in the participant, because just as with painting, whether it is in any form of art, whether it is dance, whether it is music, or in any other form of art, there has to be a participant as well as the artist. There has to be two parties involved in making the experience fruitful. That what the artist's experience has to be conveyed, and what is conveyed need not necessarily be what the artist feels. Because whatever is conveyed through the prism of the other participants' experience. It is not exactly that of the artist. So that is why you have a disconnect between the artist's experience as well as the viewer's participation in the artist's experience. And this is the prerequisite that I make for this particular talk. That painting per se, when I'm talking about painting, no, I'm not talking about other art. But historically, we have seen that when any movement in any field of art goes across the social spectrum and is reflected in different media. For example, if a movement is happening in the realms of philosophy, it gets reflected in the social behavior. It also gets reflected in the arts. So every period in history has been a reflection of whatever an art of that particular period has been. So in that, when I come to that particular stage, the next thing that I have to talk about here is about how abstract art originated. One second. What is abstract painting? Now, one of the first things that we come to is, it is not representation. It doesn't represent anything. It is when we say it is abstract, it is without an explanation. There are no explanations to whatever you are seeing. There is no connection. There is no connection to the real world in terms of reference of shapes, forms, and content. That is it. It is normable. It's as normable as it can get. You need not expect an explanation from a lot of paintings that you see. There is no explanation. It is a feeling that you have to imbibe and respond. And this is not an easy process in the beginning. Even I thought when I started off that abstract art was very easy to paint. The artist Vasily Kandinsky, who is the originator of abstract art, says that of all painting, abstract painting is the most difficult. It demands as to how to draw well, have a heightened sense for color and composition, and you have to be a true poet. And the last is essential. So you have to have that poetic quality in it to be able to paint an abstract. So the next subject I'm going to tackle is the evolution of abstract painting. How did abstract painting evolve? Now, with the invention of the camera as a tool in capturing images, the invention itself made a great difference, that it was no longer necessary to reproduce things as they were. The camera could do it. So you had a separate tool with photography to do whatever you wanted to achieve in painting. Second thing, when painting slowly started losing its importance as actual representation of whatever we see. And the advent of impressionism, the movement that started in the middle part of the 19th century, that made a lot of difference. That painting per se started changing quite a lot. It was not the kind of smooth, actual rendition of whatever you saw. It went far beyond that. First, with the Impressionists, what they did was to look at colors in a different way altogether. Now, when the Impressionists started showing their work, they were made fun of. People started saying the word Impressionism came because of a painting called Impression of a Sunrise, and the casual name which critics had called it with as Impressionism, it got stuck to that particular style of work. And the difference was that these artists did not paint in the way that normally what paintings of the earlier centuries, like the painters of Renaissance painted. The painters of the 19th century believed in light as a primary catalyst in shaping the world of an artist. So the importance of light in a painting became more pronounced rather than an actual rendition of whatever the painters were doing. And even the application of colors was done in such a way that the colors started getting more fuzzier and fuzzier. So you can see it in Renoir's painting here. And after that, again Monet's painting, woman with the parasol. You can see now one is they use the outdoors to paint. All the impression is used to paint outdoors. And secondly, they painted in very loose brush strokes where the detailed, smooth quality of the earlier master's work was absent, and the painting started appearing in a very loosely formatted fashion. So I have Renoir's work here, which is made of small strokes laid next to each other, and now prior to abstraction, there was another movement called the post-impressionist, where Vincent van Gogh, Paul Cézanne, Gauguin paired the movement with slightly more work with, how do I call it, work which was much more rougher than the work of the artists of the previous century. So what happened was, the movement which the Impressionists started going in a little further, and you can see the changes here. What happens to the images? Paul Cézanne's figures, they are not exactly the way they look. They've got a kind of a crudeness in their execution, and the power comes through. The grace of light reflecting. I'm sorry for the image quality. This was pulled off the internet, and well, these are not very high-res images. I'm really sorry about the image quality. Go ahead. When it is not fully representational, in the way things have to be. Things were done earlier. Or whether it's Vincent van Gogh's sunflowers or the starry night. There was a kind of a crudeness attached, which came forward, a kind of a wildness that manifested in the works of the post-impressionists. Now, Kandinsky was a Russian painter who spent a large part of his life in Paris, and as such we hold the belief that when Kandinsky started in the whole abstract painting movement, it started with a series called the Blue Rider series, which Kandinsky started in the first part of the 20th century, and Kandinsky also wrote a book. Now here, this is, you can call it in the beginning of the abstract concept of what abstract painting where it started. It started with Kandinsky. Then you had Mondrian. And Mondrian went to the extent of simplifying the colors, simplifying it so much that the colors became completely flat, and they were rolled down by straight lines and intersecting lines, and that was how simple Mondrian kept it. It was just the play of the flatness of colors that came from Mondrian's work. Then you have Casimir Malevich. Again, my sincere apologies for the quality of the images. I pulled them up from the internet. Please excuse me. Henry Matisse. Now Matisse was one of the finest figurative painters also, and also an abstract painter. I think the first part of the 20th century, that's maybe the 1910s and 1920s, brought a real change in the way paintings were represented. Then you have Robert Delaunay. And here, I think you can find this much later in the works of Indian artists also. In the works of Raza, you will find the same kind of imagery, but slightly more pronounced. Much later, when those images came, but Delaunay, worked with abstraction for a long time. Matisse again, one of the characteristics of painting was that abstract painting was that forms were simplified and simplified and simplified more, to the extent that the relationship between the actual object and the painted form became completely different. Now this is another of Delaunay's work. You saw the circular form there. Here he explores the planes of how the light is reflected. Again we have Kandinsky's work, very powerful, very bold, and above all, very sincere. Now, when an abstract artist paints, it is not because, that, how can I put it, it's not that he paints it, without giving attention to details. He paints it, with his heart pouring into it. And that's why, sometimes it becomes very difficult to relate, to an abstract painting, unless, of course, they have made an attempt to relate to it. I had this difficulty also. It is not that I evolved my eye for abstract painting within a couple of shows or things like that. It took me a long time. It took me a long time to go through why the artist was using this as a medium to paint. What what idea the artist was trying to express, and why he was doing it, and how also it was interpreted. Now we have to consider that Europe, the Western world in general, went through a very traumatic phase of two world wars. And when you have such savagery of the war, such mass killing, and such a lot of social disturbance, it is natural that you feel that life doesn't have any meaning at all. Especially we find this whole concept of life not having any meaning in the works of existentialist writers, Kafka and Albert Camus and authors like that. And the same mood is also reflected in the works of the artists of that particular period. We have, after I was talking about simplification. Now this is a portrait of a window, in which Matthews has painted, and it appears as nothing except a couple of lines and a couple of dark shapes, and it's simplified to the extent that it appears almost to be meaningless. Ferdinand Lager, this was another work that stylistically is different. Paul Clay's work. Again, I'm sorry about the image quality there. Barnett Newman's work, where one single line divides the entire canvas. And I often thought, when I was in my 20s, I thought, what is there, in this painting where, one line is drawn through the canvas, in the middle, and what is that so special about it? And I guess sometimes, the printed picture doesn't make sense to you, because when the painting is in front of you, it's a different experience altogether. Large painting with flat colors there, absolutely flat colors there. When I saw Barnett Newman's work or even Mark Rothko's work, something broke inside me and then said, oh my God, what have these artists seen? What I have not seen, what I have not been able to see, these people have seen it 50 years back. How did they manage to see it? How did they manage to experience it? And how did they manage to convey that experience to a onlooker? Now this whole process of of feeling something, doing it, and conveying this whole thing, it comes out of a sense of when the whole movement came of abstract expressionism. It was a movement of post-war product, and it was a sense of meaninglessness of life that was reflected in the works of these artists. That life absolutely didn't have any meaning after the kind of turmoil that two world wars took civilization. Now here it is the work of Jackson Pollock, and we've always seen the image of Pollock dripping paint onto his canvas and saying, okay, fine, this is my work. And they are called as drip paintings, we call them as drip paintings. What happened was, I think, when you look at Pollock's work, there is no beginning, there is no end. It is action itself. The painting keeps on repeating itself, in so many varieties of pure action that drips through the entire work. There were other artists like Gorky, Mark Rothko. And there is this story about Mark Rothko where he was given an order for 8 paintings for a new, very posh restaurant that was to come up in New York. He started painting them, and after a while, and they were huge, large, abstract works. And after a while, he went and sat at the particular restaurant where he was supposed to deliver these works to. And then suddenly he decided that his work cannot be displayed in a restaurant where the rich came and ate and didn't feel anything. He started feeling that that people would just come and look at the work and just go off. And so he just did not give the works to the restaurant. He said no. He had taken an advance of $25,000 in the 1920s, And he said, I'm not going to give this paintings to them. Years later, he gifted the entire set of 8 works to the date. He gifted it. Rather than sell the works, he gifted it at a much later stage. And Mark Rothko possibly was one of the finest painters where image doesn't do justice to the painting because it doesn't contain the subtleties that the painting has. You keep looking at a Rothko work, you keep looking at it, and when you keep looking at it, the work does something. This is not just my feeling. A couple of artist friends of mine who went to the Tate and saw this painting there, they also made the same reaction they had. They said, I went and saw that room with the Rothkos and I could not move out of it. This was the reaction of some of the artists who had gone to the Tate and talked about the Rothkos. Now, one more artist of that particular period was William Nayak. Barnett Newman, Franz Klein. Now, Franz Klein was one of the most abstract of the painters of his time. As much as Pollock was, Franz Klein was, in terms of reduced amount of figuration. Robert Madhav. The special thing about all these works that I've been talking about now, they are possibly the size of this screen or even larger, very large works. And when you stand in front of them, the kind of a feeling that that the way they converse with you, is a different feeling altogether. Sometimes they disturb, sometimes they bring out a sense of calm, sometimes they give you the sense of quietude. When everything is quiet, the painting goes so silent. So that is the kind of feeling you get from these works. Now, among the painters of the 40s and the 50s, there were 2 kinds of painters. One was the color-filled painters, and the other category were called as action painters. Franz Klein, Willem de Kooning, others were action painters. Pollock. Now we come to paintings like Hans Hofmann, where they experimented with the color fields of different patches of color here and there and things like that. How one patch of color really reacted reacted with other colors around it. That was the kind of color field theory that Hans Hofmann and others portrayed. Now I just want to say 1 or 2 words about the other art movements of the period. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time to include the visuals here. The 20th century brought out quite a lot of art movements. The first was we talked about was abstract. The later part of the abstracts we are calling them abstract expressionism. Okay, and all these words are not coined by the artists; they were coined by the critics. So 90% of the time, The artist paints, the critic interprets, and the public either is baffled or sometimes reacts and then appreciates. It's a different world altogether. We never know what happens with works of art these days, because right throughout the 20th century there have been different movements, like surrealism, where you had super realistic work, which was super realistic but impossible work, cubistic work of the cubism, and Dada, a movement of the 20th century. And there were artists like Pablo Picasso, Georges Braque, and the German artists Egon Schiele and Klimt doing a lot of figurative work. And it was not just the abstract movement that happened during the 20th century. And the later part of the 20th century, what happened was art started getting weirder and weirder and weirder, to the extent that the last few years, whatever is happening, after having spent 40 years in this field, even I am not able to interpret quite a lot of whatever is being thrown in the name of art today. So it's difficult. It's really difficult. The relationship of how art is conceived, made, and performed today. So it's a very. I'm trying to be as honest as possible when I'm talking about these movements. Today we have reached the stage where we came from they come a full circle. There is an environment, okay, fine. We need not explain it with words, because it is non-representative. It's completely beyond the scope of words. That's where we came into the abstract. And then we said, okay, fine, I'm going to paint the way I like, and then I'm going to convey that kind of feeling that I have inside me. You got expressionism there. And it's not that these movements were completely senseless, no. Because the artists of that of a particular period felt that emptiness that was going on in the world outside. The philosophy of that particular time also reflected it. The crass commercialism that went along with that also reflected it. So the later part of the 20th century, you find a lot of crassly commercial, completely commercial work. So maybe in the middle of the 20th century, some real good abstract painting came. Afterwards, it started disintegrating in whichever way it was possible. And this is my field. My way of looking at things. I really do. Now from there we just come to our own country. Okay, just putting one more visual of Alexander Calder, Richard Devencon. You can call them and put them in colorful painting. And abstract art in India. Now, whatever has to happen in the West has to happen in this country also. It's an extension of whatever they have gone through. But our own interpretation here was slightly different from the interpretation in the West. And when we came to abstraction, I have a point to make here that in a way, artists in India were always very abstract. But somewhere the whole figurative rhythm overtook them. And afraid about the artists that India had among the abstract artists, there was V.S. Gaitonde, Adikulam, Ram Kumar, Akbar Padamsi, J. Swaminathan, K.C.S. Manikar. I'm just showing you now a cross-section of these artists to you. This is Gaitonde's work. Now, when I speak about Gaitonde's work, I think I can react more to Gaitonde's work rather than reacting to many other artists' works, because each of Gaitonde's paintings, there is, you can recognize it as Gaitonde's painting. There is stylistic consistency, but at the same time, each painting is different. Each painting is so different that you can see how the artist whole psyche moves around. Completely different kind of visual interpretation of whatever he sees. Unfortunately, I could not get you proper images. Next time when I have this talk, I'll have the images, all pucker, all layers. This is Akbar Padamsi's work from the Metascape series. J. Swaminathan, who's had a tremendous amount of influence on me when I was much younger. Adikulam, in terms of pure abstraction, I think we had a master in our midst. Ram Kumar. Again, a phenomenal master. This painting reminds you of landscapes, but aren't landscapes. Then there is K.C.S. Manikar with a series called Words and Symbols, which is possibly another very Indianized version of abstract. At the end, when I'm just including a couple of paintings of mine. I think I gave a gist of whatever little I know about abstraction. Now, abstraction is not something that, when you say it's abstract, it does mean that when it cannot be conveyed in words. And I'm trying to make this extremely useless act of defining an abstraction. When it is undefinable, I'm trying to define it with words, which can, all of you can call it a foolish act. Because ultimately I will not be able to describe what abstraction is. It is the absence of whatever whatever sense we make of things of the world. So I may not know much how to express abstract painting in words. I have tried to explain it as much as I can. And in trying to respond to abstract paintings, I've also been, during my years, I've also been punching bag for other people's jokes. That this guy doesn't have any other work to do. He just keeps on painting something and calls it abstract and things like that. It doesn't matter because for an artist, it is the act of painting that is more important than the painting making any sense. Sense is not made in a lot of ways. So I don't know whether I've explained it properly. I don't know whether the explanation is required or whether it is only the ability to react to situation that is I leave it to you. If you have any questions, if I can answer, I will answer it. If I can't, I will gracefully say I don't know.
I don't know anything about abstract painting, but I can tell you about this. I know nothing about painting abstract painting at all. My impression is there is an inexpressible beauty in it. It looks chaotic, but there is an indiscernible pattern underlying it, some design. It sort of captivates your mind, and you yourself cannot express the feeling when you see the painting. So I can very well understand Mr. Nayak saying that he cannot express the meaning of what he's doing. Because that meaning is so deep in him, creativity, which cannot be expressed in words. It can only be portrayed in the work of art. So it depends upon because of the person who is watching it. It is up to him to come out with whatever meaning he is able to read into it, which is not coincide with the meaning the painter has deep in him, which he cannot express. So that's been beautifully brought up by. I have one question. You were saying the surrealism, cubism, and Dada movements. Can you please explain these three?
I kept it out of the purview of the discussion because we cannot actually put them on the just classify them under abstract painting. Now, cubist painting, what happened was in the previous century when artists like Cézanne were painting, their painting started acquiring kind of a character where everything was molded in a different way or in terms of layers and forms being shifted slightly differently. Now the pattern became much more precise and it became more patterned rather than conventionally how it is linked in to nature. Everything started changing so much. Then what happened was when the cubists started looking at things differently, they simplified it further. So to them, the objects were not what objects you saw, but they were just turned into squares, rectangles, cubes, and triangles, and various shapes, and these shapes started overlapping over each other and then forming a painting. This is the genesis of cubism. Now Dada is again a variety of rebellion that started during the first part of the last century. That it was again a reaction to the kind of deep-seated notions of how painting should be, and it was a reaction to it. And it was a very rebellious reaction. Rebellion happens all the time, whether it is painting, whether it is philosophy, whether it is anything. That thought of rebellion is always there. I want to change. Something should change. This is a part of the human nature. And this is the reason why Cubism came into play. Later on, Picasso and Braque were the two principal advocates of Cubism. They also changed. They didn't stay there. They moved. So it is not in one straight line that we're talking about. Whether it's Dada, whether it's Cubism, or whether it's Surrealism, where you see in Salvador Dali's painting, clocks which are bent and things dripping, all impossible things, but ordinary objects, denoted in a particular extraordinary in an extraordinary way. They are not it's a clock which is dripping, or a human head which is dripping, or something like that.
How the country is surrealist?
Yeah.
Surrealism means stick as they are as a sheep.
As you see, but super real and distorted.